8 hours is not a medical finding. It is a slogan from 1817. It is 1:15 in the morning, and you are doing arithmetic. If you fall asleep right now, you get 5 hours and 45 minutes. You will not fall asleep right now. You know this, because you are doing arithmetic. So the number drops. 5.5, 5.25. Somewhere in there, the arithmetic stops being about sleep and starts being about tomorrow, and how much of tomorrow you have already spent. Almost everyone has run this calculation at some point. What is strange is that almost everyone runs it against the same number. 8 hours. Not 7, not 9. 8 is the figure you measure yourself against, and falling short of it feels like a debt that carries over into the morning. The belief underneath the arithmetic is simple, and almost nobody examines it. Human beings require 8 hours of sleep. Less than that is damage, and the damage adds up. It is a reasonable thing to believe. You have heard the number your whole life. From doctors, from headlines, from the device on your wrist that grades you against it every morning and shows you the shortfall in a color meant to worry you. So here is where the 8 actually comes from. Not a laboratory, a campaign to shorten the working day. In 1817, a factory owner named Robert Owen, running a mill community at New Lanark in Scotland, proposed cutting the day into 3 equal pieces. 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. It was a demand, not a measurement. Owen was arguing about factory shifts, not about human brains. The slogan traveled with the labor movement for the next 100 years, and the 8-hour day slowly became law. Rest received 8 hours because a day has 24 of them and 3 divides in cleanly. That is the entire derivation. There is nothing else underneath it. So what happens when you stop dividing and start measuring? In 2015, a research team strapped activity monitors to 94 people living in 3 societies, with no electricity and no artificial light: the Hadza in Tanzania, the Juhwansi San in Namibia, and the Taimane in Bolivia. These groups are the closest available approximation of how human beings slept before the light bulb. The monitors ran for more than 1,100 nights in total. Average sleep came in between 5.7 and 7.1 hours, depending on the group and the season. Nobody was reaching 8. Not one of the 3 societies in either half of the year. They were not going to bed at sunset either, which is the usual assumption. Sleep began, on average, more than 3 hours after the sun went down. And they were not making it up in naps. Napping happened on under a quarter of summer days and under a tenth of winter days. Then there is the finding that should stop you. Chronic insomnia runs somewhere between 10 and 30% across industrial societies. In these 3 groups, 5% of people said they sometimes had trouble falling asleep. The people sleeping the fewest hours were the people least troubled by sleep. Nobody there was lying in the dark at 1:15, doing arithmetic. There was no target to fall short of, so there was nothing to fall short of it by. Now take the large studies. When researchers pool decades of cohort data and plot death rates against sleep duration, they do not get a slope. They get a curve with a floor. The floor sits at roughly 7 hours. Risk climbs as sleep gets shorter, at about 6% for every hour lost. Risk also climbs as sleep gets longer, at about 13% for every hour gained. Read that second number again. Hour for hour. Long sleep tracks worse outcomes than short sleep does. Whatever 8 hours represents, it is not the safe end of a scale, and the requirement is not even fixed from person to person. Geneticists at the University of California, San Francisco, traced a family across 3 generations who sleep 4 to 6 hours a night, feel completely rested, and carry a mutation in a gene called ADRB1. An earlier mutation in a gene called DEC2 produced the same pattern. The people carrying it averaged 6.25 hours. Their relatives without it averaged just over 8. Same family, same house, different requirement. The length of the night is not fixed. Neither, as it turns out, is the shape of it. The historian Roger Eckhirch spent years working through court records, letters, poems, essays, travel accounts, newspapers, and novels from before the industrial age. He found upwards of 2,000 references to something he was not looking for. People went to bed, slept for a few hours, and then woke up. Not from noise, not from worry. This was simply what happened, and it was so ordinary that it had a name. They called it their first sleep. In the darkness that followed, they talked, they wrote, they did chores, they had sex, they thought. Then they lay back down for what they called their second sleep and slept until dawn. Francis Bacon had a phrase for that gap in the middle of the night. He called it the time between sleeps. Robert Louis Stevenson, waking in it, called it a nightly resurrection. Across the 19th century, the first sleep stretched, the second one shrank, and the gap between them closed. By the end of that century, sleeping straight through was simply what the word sleep meant. Look at what that lines up with. The same century that standardized the working day standardized the night. One block, one duration, the same for everyone. 8 continuous hours is not an ancient human requirement. It is roughly as old as the factory whistle. None of this means sleep does not matter. The curve has a floor, and people far below that floor sit higher up the risk. Sleep loss is real. It is measurable. And the research on it is not gentle. This is not an argument for sleeping less. What is not established is the 8. What the evidence describes instead is a range, centered lower than the number you were handed, varying between people, and for most of human history taken in more than one piece. Which brings us back to 1:15 in the morning. You are lying in the dark, measuring yourself against a figure that a factory reformer chose because it divided a day into 3. The measuring is doing something to you. The figure is not doing anything for you. The night was never 8 hours long. It was as long as it was, and then it was morning.